Hello, everyone. We are so excited to have this conversation today. Lindsay and I met last week, and she is the founder of The Intuitive Mother. As a certified hypnobirthing practitioner, she's a really big advocate for helping the birthing process connect in a new way. And I'm really excited to dive into all the things because, again, we had this conversation last week. This is really unplanned. And I was like, I don't know if you want to hop on a live, but I would love to share your work. And so, without going too far down that rabbit hole, I'm just really excited for this conversation for many reasons. In a lot of my practice sessions, like my clients are coming in with a very either disjointed relationship with a parent or separation all the way through. And that goes beyond just their personal experience. I'm seeing it in the generational work that I do. And so when I heard what you did, I was just mind blown. First of all, because I'd never heard of this. I mean, I've heard of hypnotherapy, and it all makes sense once we started talking about it. And I just started seeing the impact. I was like, oh my goodness, if we could start this process so much earlier of connecting with our children, and even just I'm not going to speak to it, but I'll let you do it. And it just opened such huge potential that I see coming forward. And so thank you for offering your time on the 4th of July. Thank you, everybody, for being here on the 4th of July. But without going any further, Lindsay, I just, want to talk about your experience that led you into this and, why you feel this is so important to you personally.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. This is such a cool experience for me.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so my journey started a long time ago. I got pregnant and I had a miscarriage. And I think that was so profound on so many levels. The biggest impact for me was I felt like I couldn't trust my body, like it was broken, it didn't know what to do, and that inner wisdom and that inner sort of that intuition felt like it wasn't there for me.
Mhm.
Um, and like I've been let down a little bit. And so then fast forward another 2 months and I'm pregnant again. Um, and I carried all of that feeling of loss and that sadness and that grief into that
Mhm.
pregnancy and then into that labor. And
Mhm.
so for that labor and delivery, I worked against my body. I thought, I can't trust it. It doesn't know what it's doing. I need to rely on the wisdom and the advice of others. And I can't trust sort of the inner voice that I have. And
Wow.
so labor felt like it was something that had been done to me or that I hadn't really experienced, I guess, in the first person. I wasn't an active participant. And
Mhm.
so then when I got pregnant again a couple years later, I said, I can't go through that again. I can't do that. I need to feel like I am in control. I need to feel like this is something that I'm doing. And so I found hypnobirthing. And at first, I think I was, similar to you. I was like, I don't really know what this is about, and I don't know if this will work. And it was almost within the first 5 minutes of taking this course, it was this transformational experience. I learned about what my body was going through, what it would do, how to connect more with my baby, and then how to get my power back and how to release these fears that I had. And so it was this deeply cleansing experience for me. And then come to when I went into labor, I was so calm and I felt
Mhm.
in control and I was at home. And I remember calling the midwife and saying, well, I think we've got some time. And within an hour of her arriving, my son had arrived.
Oh, wow.
And they'd said, actually, you're going to have to go into hospital. Um, and I was so deeply relaxed and so in tune with my body and my baby that we both said, we're not going to the
Yeah.
hospital. So things just sped up when we worked in tune with each other. And I just
Mm.
breathed him into the world. And he was
Wow.
there and he was perfect. And I felt like a goddess. I felt like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I've got all this power inside of me. And my husband described it as like an Amazonian warrior or something.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's
And
amazing.
so he said, that's incredible. And so within, a few minutes of giving birth, I said, everybody needs to know how to do this.
Mhm.
This is something that will serve women forever. It's a
Mhm.
life skill after you've learned it. And so as soon as I went back to work, I said, that's what I want to do. I want to teach everybody how to do this.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, even just hearing you talk about it, you can feel the energy behind it. And just the way in which you described, which I'm sure so many women who have gone through loss have experienced that exchange. Maybe they haven't quite been able to name it yet. And
Mhm.
to know that, oh my gosh, I'm not alone, that, yeah, I didn't trust my body. I don't trust the science. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to experience that again. And then to
Mhm.
even have a hard labor afterwards. I know that there are women I know that had that same experience where they had gone through multiple losses, and then their birthing process was so tumultuous. And it was, I mean, again, like you're experiencing this exchange of energy that, can feel so heavy.
Mhm.
And we know that emotions are held within the womb space. And I wrote about this today, which is kind of cool that it came through in just divine timing. And that's where we birth things. It's literally our womb space. And so if we can understand what we're experiencing, I feel that that's that bridge and connection that
Mhm.
makes that process so much easier. You said and mentioned to me in our conversation that this is very common practice in England, which is where you guys were stationed at the time.
Mhm.
And it's almost like a gift that's given to mothers. And I'm really excited to learn, like, how has it been to bring it here and to try to share this information and really make that almost the same thing here, where people are like, wow, this is such a gift.
Yeah, it's been really fun actually. The hypnobirthing community in the US is amazing, super supportive. Everybody's coming at it from a very similar viewpoint of we want to deliver this and bring this to as many women as we can.
Hmm.
So we tend to really build each other up, and it is still a really small community.
Hmm.
So in England, it's a household name.
Yeah.
Whenever you get pregnant, people will say, "Have you signed up for a childbirth class? Are you doing hypnobirthing?" And so it's within the same sentence. Whereas here, it's still not really on even in the vocabulary,
Mhm.
which I think is exciting
Yeah.
because it opens up an opportunity for us to bring it out there, to be the voice and be the face. And so there's a lot of pressure there, but it's also
Yeah.
really exciting. Um, but yeah, the people I've worked with so far have just had these amazing experiences, and so they're one by one sharing that with more and more people. But they've not thought about hypnobirthing before, and it just happened to be this sort of fortuitous meeting as we
Mhm.
had. Um, and then they find out what it is, and they say, "Well, I'll give that a try." And within again the first class, they're emailing me going, "I can't believe I've never heard of this before.
Mhm.
I'm so excited. I've decided to try this." And everyone I've worked with so far, knock on wood, has had the birth they wanted. So
Oh
whatever
my
their plan was going in, they got to have that, and that's pretty magical for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so, for anybody who doesn't know what hypnobirthing is, can you guide us through a little bit behind like
Yeah.
what it is and how it works? And yeah, would love to know.
Absolutely. So it was originally developed by Marie Mongan, who is the mother of hypnobirthing, or sort of the
Mhm.
Hypnobirthing International, and that is um, sort of the gold standard of hypnobirthing. But she developed it for her daughter, who was she was pregnant, going into labor, and she wanted to give her something that would allow her to have a very calm and serene and peaceful and beautiful experience. And so the whole idea is that you're learning, it's a childbirth education course really at its heart. You're learning what your body is going through, what you're going to do, what labor looks like, what your body is trying to do while you're in labor. And then alongside that, you're doing these relaxation practices and these visualization practices where you're visualizing the birth that you envision. So you're thinking about, I want it to go this way or that way, but you're putting that in your mind's eye from the very
Mhm.
beginning. And at the same time, you're building this connection between you and baby, because you can absolutely communicate with your baby.
Mhm.
Um, I remember several times being frustrated with my sons because they weren't kicking enough that day. And so, these relaxation techniques allowed me to go in and say, "Hey, can you move a bit more? Because I'm getting worried about you." And then, the flurries and the flutters happen. So that was
Mhm.
amazing. But yeah, it teaches you to release fears, to regain your power that you may have lost. So
Mhm.
hypnobirthing covers and touches on so many things, so
Mhm.
that you are feeling. I think the idea is that you are fully prepared going into labor. You have the knowledge, you have the know-how, and you have the skills. So
Yeah.
that when you go into labor, you feel like, okay, I got this, and I can ask the questions I need to ask and make sure this is my experience and not someone else's.
Yeah, that's really powerful because I think, there's no rule book on any of this process. And like from birthing to being pregnant to afterwards, and then we can go down that. But
Mm,
so to be able to feel so prepared and not to feel scared or stressed, it
mhm,
really, because we know and we can measure in science like the effects of, and this is not to stress parents out or mothers out, especially we already pressure
of course.
ourselves enough, but we can prove that high cortisol levels throughout pregnancy really impact a child
Mhm,
after they're born, because it's the chemical exchange that they experience on such a heightened level consistently. And again, it's not to place blame on a mom or anything. We don't know what we don't know. But if we can kind of reverse that slowly to be able to at least bring in your energy at a much calmer level, it's
yeah.
going to help your child develop in that same energy in that same way. Um,
Mhm.
you described your work as helping mothers reclaim their power. And I just want to know first, how does reclaiming their power during the birthing process impact them? But then how does it also impact their children after the birth?
That's a really good question. And I
Mhm.
love talking about this because I feel like as women, we release our power and we give our power away a lot of times completely unknowingly. We don't know that we've done that. So, in reclaiming our power, first for us as moms, it allows us to tap into, I think, this deeper intuition and to trust that.
Mhm.
Um, I think from my experience, a long time I'd been taught your gut, your intuition may be wrong.
Mm,
You need to rely on the people in the white coat or on the people who are experts. And so this reclaiming of power says, well, no, actually, I can hold space here and I deserve
mm,
space here. And I can ask the questions I want to ask and I can demand the experience that I want to have. And so for me, that was so powerful. I could say, I want this, I don't want that.
mhm.
And I'm going to birth my baby in the way that I want. So for me, that was a really key turning point. And then I think afterward, what's been so profound for me is understanding that I can hold boundaries and I can hold space for my children. So
Mm,
in that same vein, that power isn't power over my children, it's my own inner power to be able to say I'm doing the right thing. I can hold space for them to not be happy about the boundary I've placed,
mhm,
but
mhm.
I can still place it and be okay with that. So it's that trust and that inner wisdom and that inner power that I think has been so amazing for me. And that all started with hypnobirthing.
Wow. I think it's incredible because I what I've seen too is like we, especially as women, we feel like we have to come from this anger, rage state to hold a boundary. And what I'm hearing you say is that when we hold this boundary, it can be simply because we know that it's in our highest good to hold it. And
Mm-hmm.
again, in knowing that and not having to come from that like anger energy, right? It's more of a just no, I know that this is here. We can explain it from that much clearer way. Not saying that
Mm-hmm.
we're perfect and we don't have moments, like we're
Oh,
human, but
we all have our
we
moments
all
when
have
it's all
moments.
too
Like
much.
we're like,
Yes,
we get it. Like kids come in needing a snack, all the like it's the
all
thing.
the things at once. Yep.
But we can at least do our best, right? To show up in that way that is communicating that boundary for them, because then what it does for them is it allows them to communicate boundaries back,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have to feel like they have to throw the tantrum in order to get the attention, or
Yeah.
you're guiding them in so many different ways. I can see it where it's like instead of the meltdowns we're actually seeing this dialogue where,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean obviously like depending on the age it can take a little bit of work, right? But at least the energy is supportive so that
Mhm.
when they are communicating, you're able to guide them in that different direction versus it being this almost battle of back and
Mhm.
forth between parent and child, which
Yes.
is a huge shift. You said something that I really wanted to tap into is that we're seeing this collective shift in understanding on this hierarchy of parenting, right? Like
Mhm.
parents don't have to be above their kids. They can be the guide while holding boundaries, while again making sure they don't harm themselves. Like we don't need to die, okay?
Exactly.
But like we can also hold that space in a way that's guiding them into their highest potential, where we're just really gifting them the opportunities that we never necessarily had in a society that's like told us how to be for so long. If it
Mhm.
starts with the parenting at home, then they're able to go into their schools or their environment and have more grounded communication
Yeah.
and not come from that wounded space of, again, hurt, shame, fear, because then they can process what they're going through.
Mhm.
And I mean, I'm just getting chills like thinking about all of this because, again, it's not that we're saying that you can't teach your children right versus wrong. It is still about, though, communicating this in a way of understanding.
Mhm.
It kind of, I think, takes away that I told you so, or do this because you're told, like that
Yeah.
phrase. It's more of like, let me show you why. And you can feel how you feel, and we can come back later.
Mhm.
Um, so, when you've seen, and you kind of touched on this, like when parents understand the hypnobirthing process, it sounds like there's many layers after the birth that really come forward. So what are you seeing in your own parenting, or even again in your clients, where they're coming back and they're like, oh my gosh, because I learned this, here's how this is playing out, and we're in year 5, right?
Yeah. I think from my own experience, there were lots of things. It was taking time, not
Mm-hmm.
reacting in that moment, but taking time and taking space for me to say, okay, I need to actually think about how I feel about this situation and how I'm going to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you're taught in hypnobirthing to take space and take time if there's a decision you need to make about how your birthing process is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that stays with you, the fact that that was okay, that an emergency in someone else's mind wasn't actually an emergency, and you can hold space and take time. So that's been a big one for me,
Mm-hmm.
because I think traditionally I wouldn't have even counted to 5. It just would have been a gut reaction. This is how I'm feeling, and it's that autopilot that we go into when we're having
Mm-hmm.
that emotion, especially like the anger or sadness. We kind of tap out of the control part of our mind, and we just go to what we've that learned behavior. So I think I've learned
Yeah.
to take space and to kind of question that reaction first before it comes out. So for me, that's been really profound.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm having a hard day, I will use self hypnosis. I know how to do it. I know how to drop into it and how to come back out. And that's a skill that I learned through hypnobirthing. So if I've had a
Mm-hmm.
really tough day, and those days where the noise level doesn't ever drop, um, and I just feel like I'm so tired and how am I going to get through this? I will have a 30-second to 1 minute self hypnosis really quick, take
Mm-hmm.
myself in, say the things I need to hear. I'm strong, I'm capable, I'm a good parent, I can do this. Come
Mm-hmm.
back out, and I feel refreshed and ready to take on, say, the next hour or two or whatever it is until bedtime, basically, until
Yeah.
we get that space. Um, and a lot of the moms that I've worked with, I think, have this inner calm and this inner peace. And so when they approach their children, there's this new sense of patience, and understanding that they come with. And so they have, at least in my experience, postpartum isn't quite as stressful for them.
Mm.
If they're welcoming a second or a third child, they've got the toolkit to be able to kind of face the chaos in a way that they may not have
Mhm.
had before.
Yeah.
So those are some of the major things that I'm seeing now, and I'm excited to see it as the children age and as they get older, and maybe as they add more children to their family.
Right. Well, and what I'm hearing, what I keep hearing you say is like, you're really helping people see the power behind regulation. And we keep hearing about nervous system regulation, and it is coming out more and more as mainstream. But the power behind our nervous system being regulated is that, the polyvagal theory of like matching the energy of
Mhm.
others in our environment. So if you think about it, when you're coming in from this grounded state and more calm and you're regulated, then when your child comes in, they're sensing that. And so
Mhm.
they can then match it. Not saying that it's always, right? Like kids
Yeah.
have their own thing, their own personalities, their own development, and
Mhm.
it's not about, having to, again, be perfect in this. But like you said, when those moments happen, knowing, hey, I have this ability to tap in, it's going to take me 60 to 90 seconds to like go in, do what I need, and like feel better so
Mhm.
that I can go into this noisy chaos.
I
And
can survive it.
I
Survive it.
can survive it.
Exactly.
And it just continues that energetic programming for our children to
Mhm.
then see, okay, mom can have chaos going on in the background and come through it still at a grounded state. It doesn't mean that, again, you're starting there, but you're taking the steps to get there.
Yeah.
And that teaches them how to do the same, which again, we know that kids model behavior. And can you imagine the impact in our children, in our schools, in our community, if people had this behavior modeled more often? Because I definitely didn't have it. Nope, love my
No.
parents. I definitely did not model it when I was a parent, like of younger kids. Adult parenting is its own thing. But I just see the impact, the impact is so huge, and it does take a little bit of practice. And I think that's something to kind of consider when you're looking into these different modalities of coming
Mhm.
back into grounding and understanding yourself, is that every bit of this is a practice.
Yeah.
And so if you show up one day and it's not perfect, right? It's okay, because you're learning how to do it. You're unlearning. I mean, I'm 41, so I'm unlearning years of how I like reacted and responded. And so when we can learn to give ourselves a little bit of space, I think
Mhm.
that really helps.
Absolutely.
What patterns in modern birthing culture do you believe really disconnects us from that innate wisdom that you're talking about?
So yeah, so I love that question.
Mhm,
I had such a different experience in England.
mhm,
And so I felt like it really lent itself to this model. You work with
mhm,
midwives. It's, you're out of a hospital setting. You don't set foot in a hospital unless you absolutely want to. Ultrasounds in some communities happen in hospitals. In mine, it did. But for actual childbirth and checkups and appointments, you can choose to have it in lots of different settings. Um, and so it felt very natural, very community based, and it was kind of like that village that we hear about, these
mhm,
tales about, but that we just don't always have in modern day living.
mhm,
Whereas my sister had a very different experience here in the U.S., and every appointment was in a medical setting. It was in a doctor's
mhm,
office or it was in a hospital. Her birth was very medicalized. It was in a hospital setting. There was just the bed with some stirrups and the machines everywhere. And some of this I know can't be avoided, but I think if we can make it feel like it's more of a home setting or more
mhm,
less medicalized, I guess, less sterile, what human things can we bring into it that
mhm,
allow for that sort of that sense of community, that sense of safety? I think for me, having my second son at home, it felt so safe because I was
yeah,
in my environment and I could make it how I wanted. And so a lot of times in hypnobirthing, we talk about making the hospital space your environment. Can you bring candles even if they're battery operated?
yeah.
Um, so it's taking, I think, in modern medicine and in modern day sort of maternal care here in this country, I think it's taking the medical out of it as much as we
Mhm,
can.
yeah.
I was laughing with a mom the other day. She was being weighed at every appointment and being told, this is how much weight you'll put on. Well, that's going to add a layer of stress that no mom
Mhm,
needs.
yeah.
And so I said to her, I said, take it with a grain of salt because I never got weighed. And if I did, I don't remember it. Nobody ever told me what the number was.
Mhm,
And so it's these things that we feel like we need to do, measuring someone's blood pressure to a point, if they have white coat syndrome or if they're very nervous and telling them, oh, you've got high blood pressure, that's adding another layer of stress.
yeah.
So
It is.
what can we do to sort of do the tests that we need, but not layer upon layer upon layer? Because it adds a layer of stress that we don't need when we're already carrying a small human.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, all the things that I was hearing you say is like the safety and security, which is all in the root chakra. And like I see this a lot in clients where that's like the very foundation that's been broken.
Hmm.
And it's all about safety, security, and your environment. And community is a big part of that.
Yeah.
And so it's just like seeing it in my mind. I was like, wow. So if the mother feels safe in her environment, even if you are choosing to go into the hospital, it doesn't say, you're not saying like, don't do that.
Mm.
Because there are like people that do have to have that level of care.
Yep.
And it's like, how can you bring those elements to provide that safety and security within your body? So then your child feels safe coming into the world. And you can almost see it as like how you're able to even, have the birthing process so much easier because you're grounded, because you feel safe. And again, not saying that you're not like going through all the things, like you still have the same
You're still in labor at the end of
you're
the day.
still in
Yes,
labor,
but
it's still that process, but at least you can combat those extra stressors that we tend to have. And I can only imagine even the energy coming from the different things that are in a hospital room. Like I'm like thinking about all the things. I'm like, wow, I never considered it. But you don't consider that stuff until you start thinking about it. And so if there is somebody that is going through the birthing process and they're having that twist in medical care, right? So they are under a more watched pregnancy, something that's medically necessary.
yeah.
How can they incorporate some of these practices into their labor experience?
So I love that. The relaxation practices are great for anyone, any type of pregnancy. All of hypnobirthing really brings with it a toolkit that any type of pregnancy or delivery they can be used. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so if you've got somebody that needs to be in the hospital, and that is a lot of people's path. That's where they feel comfortable because they're experts there. And so, yeah, I would encourage people to bring candles, bring something from home that brings you calm. So if you've got, I've got a salt rock machine behind me that's pumping out lavender
Mhm.
oil because I love the smell of lavender. Um, if you've got pictures that you want to bring or affirmations that you want to put on the wall, we've got a beautiful picture of a flower petal opening and a child's head crowning right in the middle of the flower. And it helps you to visualize what your body is going to go through. And it's just a beautiful picture to look at as you're going through this
Mhm.
experience. Um, Affirmations are wonderful to have around the room. So I am strong, I am capable, my body knows what it's doing, I am going to
Mhm.
surrender to the rhythm of my body. All of these really lovely thoughts to be having floating around in your head. So if you can pin those around the room,
Mhm.
cover the clock on the wall, find a great picture so that you don't see the time passing. And
Yeah.
you're just in this really safe space where time doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So there's lots of really cool things. Music is a great one too.
Yeah.
We did make a mixtape for my first delivery, and I can tell you the songs on it were not helpful.
No,
The
that's
music
so
can be really calming. Yeah, my husband put Under Pressure and I Want to Break Free on there.
oh gosh.
So I
That's
they were not
hilarious.
calming, but this was before hypnobirthing, so we'll let it slide. But yeah,
Yeah,
music can be really great too.
that's so funny. Yeah, music and our environment and the words like really do impact us. We don't realize how much they do, and especially even what my next question would be is, how soon should women consider hypnobirthing? Do you think it's something we could even consider well before we even think about conceiving a child? Like, if I feel like you could like
Yeah.
probably open the doorway to conception, but I'll let you talk.
There is a hypnosis for fertility actually, which is so great that you've drawn that parallel.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is. I sadly do not know how to do it, but someday would love
Mhm.
to learn. But there
Yeah.
are several experts within the hypnobirthing community that can do hypnosis for fertility, and it absolutely taps into all the same things that we've talked about and more to help you in that journey to getting pregnant. So I know they've helped people with fertility issues to get pregnant as well,
Mhm.
which is amazing because it is that mind body connection um,
Mhm.
that is it's just healed through hypnosis. So we normally for hypnobirthing, what we suggest is 20 weeks.
Okay.
Um, and I think that's due to where you're at in your pregnancy. They say you can never really start too early. So
Mhm.
there's probably moments where you're like, actually, I'm ready to start this a little bit earlier. And
Mhm.
I think you can totally do that. I mean, it's when you're comfortable learning these skills, and the earlier you do it, the more time you get to practice. And
Mm.
like you were saying, it is a practice. And so the more we get to do it, the more secure and able we feel to use these skills. And so, yeah, I would encourage anyone that's thinking about it to start researching, when you're around 18, 19, 20 weeks pregnant, get into a course, and then you
Mhm.
can keep practicing. And people do offer refresher courses if you get to 36 weeks and you're going, oh, I'm not sure I'm doing this right. I want to have another session. You can do that.
Mhm. Yeah, and that leads me to one of my last questions is like, how does the process work? Do people come in person? Is it virtual, kind of a combination? What's the modality?
So it can be a combination if you want. Right now, I offer over Zoom, and that's simply so that it's as convenient as possible. I know it's hard. We're all sort of working all over the place. Some people are having to go back to the office, some people are still at home.
Mhm.
So finding a way to make it as accessible as possible.
Mhm.
Um, but we offer group classes, so you can have a group where you can create the little community, which is what I love. That's what I had. Um, so you can have a class with about 6 couples in it, sometimes fewer, but never more than 6. And so you have this team that you're sort of with, and you're at similar
Mhm.
points in your pregnancy. So that when you have your babies, you've got this little network that you've created. You can also do private if that feels better, and that is a little bit more dedicated just to you. And so you can sort of set the pace. Um, but yeah, I think with private, you can do it in person or over Zoom.
Mhm.
That's always a little bit easier because you're sort of working around one couple
Yeah.
rather than up to 6. But yeah, so it can be a combination, I guess.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, yeah, I mean, it's really amazing what technology has allowed us to really help reach people in different ways. I know my practice used to be all in person and now it's all virtual, and it's such a huge experience for clients because again, you're able to do things in the comfortability of your space. It helps you really bring that work to where you're at. And especially if you're talking about hypnobirthing and making your space feel safe, like why would you not want to build that practice and that energy resonance within the space that you're about to give birth? So I
Mhm.
think that's really beautiful. If people are interested, like they've heard this conversation and they want to connect with you, what is the best way that they can reach out to you? And I'll make sure that we get that information below.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so email is great.
Mhm.
Um, we've just launched our website, so that's theintuitivemother.org. So that's another great way to go and find out more about hypnobirthing and get in touch.
Mhm.
But we're also on Facebook at The Intuitive Mother and Instagram at The Intuitive Mother underscore HB.
Amazing.
Lots of
Yeah.
places.
Yeah. Well, and you're in the Dallas area too, if
Yeah.
anybody's looking for that in-person connection. Well, I really appreciate this conversation. And I always like to ask people, like, what's the one thing that you hope the impact of your work has in really parenting and being a mother and the way forward?
I think the reason I got into this and what drives me every day is taking care of moms. I
Mhm.
feel like we just, we do such a hard job. It's just an amazing experience and it can be beautiful. And I think if I can give power to moms and make them feel special and celebrate them, then that would be the biggest impact that I could have.
I love that. I love it. I think it's so beautiful the work that you're doing and just the way in which I see it, expanding in our communities. So, again, I'm so thankful for the way in which we met through Amy, like posting about all the things. And that was all a bypassing by Jenny. So, it's everything's always divinely orchestrated. So I'm really
Mhm.
excited for everybody to learn more about you and just our future collaborations. I know that will come. So again, this is why we do these conversations, is to really provide more depth to the work that's being done, and the ability to bring people together in my communities to say, wow, like I had no idea what this was, and now I'm interested. Now I'm going to have this great experience, or I know someone who's pregnant and who could use this. So again, I just want to thank you for your time, and thank you
Thank you.
everyone who showed up. And I'll make sure to answer any questions that you might have. And I'm sure Lindsay is happy to help as well. So we hope you
Absolutely.
guys enjoy the rest of this day, and thank you for joining us.